Last week, we talked about matters of the heart and controlling our emotions. And we talked about pride, we talked about anger, and then we kind of left talking about a broken spirit. And I clarified that I was, as regards to the broken spirit that Solomon was talking about, it was a spirit that was devastated by the overpowerment of emotions. Um, And what I didn't get to was kind of the second part of that part about how do we deal with an overwhelming emotions. And particularly in that, I was kind of going along the lines of the idea of depression, when we just become overwhelmed with sorrow, remorse, anger, and all these feelings of emotions that we talked about last week are indeed God-given and are indeed a blessing when used properly, when used in a godly context in the way set forth in the scriptures. And we talked about that last week. But what I want to talk about now is how to gain control, or the key to gaining control of our emotions. And the first part that goes more along the lines of dealing with depression and that broken spirit will also tie into the overall idea of gaining control of our emotions in general. And I have about four things that Solomon tells us that we can use towards overcoming that overwhelming feeling of being sworn by our emotions. And the number one thing that we have is to trust in God. And Solomon tells us in 29:25, the fear of man brings a snare, but one who trusts in the Lord will be protected. And I think we used this verse when we talked about anger, and we've talked about the fear of the Lord. But the one who puts his trust in the Lord will be protected. And then 16:3, commit your works to the Lord, and your plans will be established. So when our plans and our ideas and our heart are devoted to the works of the Lord will set our paths straight. Our plans will be established in a safe manner with God. And then 23:26, it says, give me your heart, my son, and let your eyes delight in my ways. So when dealing with the broken spirit, it's important that number one, we learn to trust in God. And then, of course, wisdom. We've been talking about wisdom as the whole key thing of Proverbs here. And when we're dealing with a broken spirit and the overwhelming engulfing of emotions that affects our heart, we need to keep on that path of wisdom. And sometimes that's the problem with the overwhelmingness of emotions, is it has a tendency to want to lead us down that path of foolishness. And we talked about, the emotion in itself is not a sin. In fact, we talked about it being a gift of God, but when the action, how we react to that emotion, and that's the problem. So when in our action or reaction to those emotions, we need to use wisdom. And Solomon tells his son here, he reiterates in 3:21-26, my son, see that they do not escape from your sight. Comply with sound wisdom and discretion, and they will be life to your soul and adornment to your neck. Then you will walk in your way securely, and your foot will not stumble. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Do not be afraid of sudden danger, nor trouble from the wicked man, or from the wicked when it comes. For the Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being caught. And I know I used this verse when we talked at the very beginning about the benefits of wisdom, and this is one of the benefits of wisdom, is that as we pursue that path of wisdom, God will guide us and God will keep us towards that path and lighten our way, if we want to so to say. Another thing we need to look at is hope, faith, and love. Proverbs 3:12 says, for whom the Lord loves, he disciplines, just as the Father disciplines the Son in whom he delights. And in 3:19, the Lord founded the earth by wisdom, he established the heavens by understanding. So when we talked about the fool, we talked about how the fool does not like to be disciplined. He does not like to be told that he is wrong or that he is in an error of his ways. But the person that's striving and leaning towards that path of the wise and wisdom is willing to accept rebuke and willing to accept discipline. And it talks as a father disciplines the son in whom he delights. And next week we'll get into a little bit of that parenting and dealing with children. And then in 3:19 it talks again about understanding. And we talked about that in the beginning. We haven't talked about it as much as we have wisdom, but the understanding of the nature of God and the fear of God. And so with those tools also, we can learn to overcome that overwhelming washing of emotions on our heart. And then we need to have a positive mental outlook. And Solomon understands this too. He tells us in 14:30, a tranquil heart is life to the body, but jealousy is rottenness to the bones. And funny, I think we mentioned last week too that overwhelming emotions, and when they're used inappropriately, can literally cause us to be physically sick. And definitely it affects our mental health. And we see this here. A tranquil heart is life to the body. So when our heart is at peace and when our heart has the joy of God, a tranquil heart, our bodies are at peace. But when our bodies are overtaken with jealousy, for example, one of the emotions that Solomon uses here, it's rottenness to the bones. Literally, it makes us sick. It makes us physically sick to our bones. And you can substitute any of those emotions that we've talked about there instead of just jealousy. Anger, sorrow, any of those things, when that's what fills our heart and that's our focus in our heart, that's when we become sick, we become mentally sick, we become physically sick. And so we need to keep a positive mental outlook. And in 15:30 it says, bright eyes gladden the heart, and good news refreshes the bones. And I was thinking to myself, well, the good news is right here. You know, when we get overpowered by our emotions and we struggle with sorrow, we're struggling with anger, we're struggling with whatever emotion it may be, patience is one of the key things. Sit down and regroup and think about it. We don't want to react harshly. Sit down, grab God's Word, and just start reading somewhere and see if it changes your direction. And then one of the last ones that Solomon refers to is talk and listen to friends. And I may or may not get to parts of this. There's a whole lot of stuff in there about our friendships and the bonds we form. We may get to talk about that a little bit later on. But you have to be careful of the friends that you're talking to. And 27:9 it says, oil and perfume make the heart glad, and a person's advice is sweet to his friend. And obviously we'd have to be careful of the friend or the loved one, whatever, that we're speaking to. Typically we're going to maybe talk to a loved one. But how often do we get mistreated at work, or something happens and we go to our peers? Do you know what our boss said to us? He just told me. Oh, he did. Oh, well, you know what I do? I would take him in. And all of a sudden you're caught up in someone telling you and giving you advice that really doesn't have no business in it. And is that advice that you're getting, is there any wisdom in that advice? So if you have a true friend, which is a good lesson that we could get into if we get time to, there's definitely stuff in there about friendships and true friends and what a true friend is. And obviously I think you know where I'm going, is a true friend is someone that's going to guide us with wisdom and guide us with understanding, and someone that's going to guide us that has the fear of the Lord, right? So any questions on that? So that was kind of the idea that Solomon tells us how to deal with that overpowering, overburdening of our heart with emotions when we get to the point of having a broken spirit. And then what we need to get into next, what I want to get into is, is what the key to handling our emotions is self-control. That's the bottom line. But how do we deal with that? Because emotions are pretty powerful. We talked about the power of anger, and anger is one of the ones where we're probably the quickest to react and blurt out something we shouldn't. So how do we learn to control our emotions? And question number 7 from last week, if you still have that, it says, why does the Bible emphasize the heart of the inner man so much? And in fact, it's mentioned 74 times in Proverbs, the word heart. So the first time that it's mentioned is verse, and I've got all 75 verses up here that we, no, just kidding. I didn't literally, I take someone's word for it, one of the commentaries, right? I didn't even like, okay, Proverbs 101. Okay, I'm trusting someone that put that down in a document that I've been studying. But supposedly Proverbs mentions the idea of the heart and the inner heart 74 times alone, just in the book of Proverbs. So the question there, why does the Bible emphasize the heart of the inner man so much? And I think I did put a couple scriptures to reference on our question sheet there. 423, these are from Proverbs. This is just two of the 74. Watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flows the springs of life. And then 23:7, for as he thinks within himself, so he is. He says to you, eat and drink, but his heart is not with you. And then, of course, we have Matthew 5:8, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. So any comments or answers? Why do you think the Bible emphasizes the heart of the inner man so much? Justin?
It's the core of kind of who you are, a reference of the character of what's within you.
Okay.
And I've always noticed, I thought it curious, but as a distinction between watching over your heart, where the world would just tell you follow your heart.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
There's a distinction, God kind of instructs you to guard your heart or
Okay.
to watch over your heart, and the world would have you just kind of follow your heart, follow your stomach, do what seems right to you.
Yeah.
Not wise.
And that's a good point. I had, the wise, when we talk about that path towards wisdom, the wise person has disciplined living, refined living, and they're strengthening their character. But then you have the fool, and like Justin was saying, this, follow your heart, okay? The fool is irresponsible and destructive and wallowing in free-spirited living, okay? And that's kind of the idea, that humanistic idea of follow your heart. Well, that's good if your heart's in the right place, but a lot of times our hearts really aren't in the right place, and we'll clear that up a little bit, but, it's that irresponsible, again, when we get to the fool and his foolery, we talked about that, that idea of just the free-spiritedness, oh, well, my heart told me to go do this. And depending on where your heart is or what, it may be good, but it typically, in the carnal way, it may not be. Jessica?
One of the key things I think when I'm reading the verse is from it flows the springs of life, and it's quite literally that, because the heart is our life pump. So when you react, you get angry, it pumps the blood faster. It's a chemical response, same thing. So you have to very much control the chemical reaction your body is going to have to a situation. Albeit you get angry, you get sad or frustrated, you have to overcome all that. So quite literally, this verse is saying you have to over, because it's your life, it's your life force. You have to be working with life force.
Okay, and a good point Jessica makes. The heart, an amazing way God created us. The heart is our lifeblood. It is what pumps our blood through all, that sets all of our, let's say, electrons. I used to know the synapses, or what are the things in your brain that trigger thoughts, and I used to know that stuff. I'm old now, I don't know much. I forget everything, especially something I learned in college. But Jessica brings up a good point. So the heart is the lifeblood of us. The heart controls the man. You got to look at Mark chapter 7. And many of your Bibles may even have the little heading there, the heart of the man. And I think we're all familiar with this in the parable that Christ talks about here, and he's specifically referencing with the Pharisees and meat and unclean meat and some of those issues. Um, but I want to take something specific from it. Let's look at it. It says, after he called the crowd to him again, he began saying to them, listen to me, all of you, and understand. There is nothing outside the person which can defile him if it goes into him. But the things which come out of the person are what defile the person. And when he later entered a house away from the crowd, his disciples asked him about the parable. And he said to them, are you so lacking in understanding as well? Do you not understand that whatever goes into the person from outside cannot defile him, because it does not go into his heart but into his stomach and is eliminated? Thereby he declared all foods clean. And he was saying, that which comes out of the person, that is what defiles the person. For from within, out of the hearts of the people, come evil thoughts, acts of sexual immorality, thefts, murders, acts of adultery, deeds of greed, wickedness, deceit, indecent behavior, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile the person. And it's kind of an interesting verse if you think about how he's, the whole bodily system and whatnot. It's not what goes in, because what goes in is goes to the stomach, doesn't come from the heart, or doesn't go to the heart per se. But our heart becomes defiled by the indulgence of the deeds that are listed there in the last, verse 22 through 23. And those things defile our hearts. And when those are the things that are lingering in our heart, that has a tendency to be where our heart is. And we talked about, it's interesting, it talks about pride and it talks about foolishness, the last two things it says there. And the boastful, prideful fool in his full folly, what does he think? I don't need God. I am man. I can stand alone. So what we have to focus on, and what part of what Mark chapter 7 here is getting at, is that man is inadequate. Okay, we need God in our hearts. And Solomon knew that way back when, in Proverbs. He tells us in 14:12, says, there is a way which seems right to a person, but its end is the way of death. And in 14:14, one with a wayward heart will have his fill of his own ways, but a good person will be satisfied with his. And again, it comes back to, remember why God hates the insolent pride. Man is inadequate in and of himself. And then it's imperative that when we're to beat our emotions and to have control of our emotions, man must give his heart to God. And there's several scriptures here that I have that, we know this, but, those are small. 23:26, give me your heart, my son, and let your eyes delight in my ways. And Proverbs 3:5-8, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your body and refreshment to your bones. And I know I've read that one several times in here, but it's almost probably a thematic verse of the whole Proverbs.
I think the Bible emphasizes this for us for counsel and understanding, because you look at the world and you look at the Philistines, maybe they believe there is a God, but they don't believe what he says, and that's what we need to know.
We need to know what he says.
Right.
And the world sometimes doesn't grasp it, right? Okay.
I just get away from it, I just go kill myself.
Okay, yeah. What are the other ones I have? Let's see. Matthew 22:37, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Luke 12:33-34, sell your possessions and give to charity. Make yourselves money belts that do not wear out, an exhaustible treasure in heaven where no thief comes near, nor does a moth destroy. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And then Psalms 119:10, with all my heart I have sought you. Do not let me wander from your commandments. I like what Psalm says there. It's all of my heart has sought you. And so with that idea in mind, with all of my heart seeking you, Lord, do not lead me away from your commandments. Ian?
Ezekiel prophesied a very similar notion of the idea of man being inadequate, capable of doing everything. God says, I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit within you. I will remove the heart of stone from your body and give you a heart of flesh. Again, it just echoes the same idea that wisdom comes from God. Likewise, a transformed heart will come from God as well. When we seek him, he will do that to us.
Right. It is. And you know, you kind of see, in a way, you could take it to the whole New Testament culmination where we have the plan of salvation, the renewed life, the new heart that we receive when we're baptized and we commit ourselves to God. We start anew, that pure heart that we have. And then we have that aid of the Holy Spirit. We have God in our heart. And that's what it's getting at. When we have that and grasp that and seek that and focus primarily on that, and that is our, well, not even primarily, that's our sole focus, and we put that in our heart, we will have control of our emotions. Which kind of goes to question number 8 from last week. It says, does the man under control think or act first? And then I have a couple verses. I mean, that's a pretty easy answer, I think. A plan in the heart of a person is like deep water, but a person of understanding draws it out. 23:19, listen, my sons, and be wise, and direct your heart in the way. So what do you think? Does the man under control of his emotions, does he think or act first? He's thinking first, right? And that's one of the key things we said as we started this lesson on our emotions, is that the problem is in how we act. And so rather than that urgent blurting out of anger of like something happened and what? And you know, the getting irate, sit back and relax, chill a little bit, grab your Bible, something, settle down, think and process things out. And that's one of the things that is the most obvious that was when we talk about anger. And it says that, you know, the wise man is slow to wrath. And so there's, you know, it's in the heart, like Justin was saying, how it's the taking care of your heart or the watching over your heart or just simply following your heart. So we must take care of our heart and make sure that our heart is directed in the right manner. And then our emotions must be kept in check and under a steady guidance. It's kind of an ongoing thing, this process of checks. And then this requires calculated thought rather than brash and abrasive outburst of uncontrolled emotions. Question number 9, I put, what is the greatest display of human strength? And I had 16:32 and 25:28 says, one who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and one who rules his spirit, than one who captures a city. And then, like Solomon likes to do, the flip-flop of it, like a city that is broken into and without walls, so is the person who has no self-control over his spirit. So, question number 9, what is the greatest display of human strength? If we look at those two scriptures there. Huh? Self-rule. As I just said, self-rule. Okay, and yeah, self-rule where we're able to control our emotions, right? Self-control. And it says that person that has self-control is better than the mighty, someone better than someone that took over a city. And then it uses the exact, the opposite of that city that has been overtaken, that is trampled, the walls are broken down. That's like a person who has no control of their emotions or their spirit. And it's kind of a cool thing to think of when, you know, especially if you go ask a kid, hey, what's the coolest superhero power you could have? Oh, I can fly. Oh, I've got super strength. And that's kind of where we go if you think that question, what is the greatest display of human strength? You know, and I can bench 650 pounds. And we have a tendency to think of those types of physical strengths. But in reality, what is pleasing to God and what God looks down on favorably is that person that has filled his heart with godly things, that person that has the knowledge that is able to control his emotions. And that could be one of the greatest displays of human strength. So before we move to the next section, any questions on that as we kind of finish up this section on our emotions and being able to control our emotions? Any comments? Randy?
We all know that we have essentially two sides to our heart, the good side and the bad side. And what I want to do is try to stay in touch as much as possible with what comes from the good side. But when you look at like the works of the flesh in Galatians 5, I mean, once you start going down the road of these activities, hatred, contentions, jealousy, outbursts, envy, murders, on and on and on. Well, as you get wrapped up in those sort of activities, which come out of your dark side, or whatever you want to call it, you really can't even see the good side of your heart. Those kinds of activities just squash it. And what it teaches me is there are things that I can be doing that can really diminish the things that I know that are good. And as my heart is inclined. So I hope that makes sense.
So there's activities that we can involve ourselves in that trigger the bad side of the heart.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just how when you're being really contentious. I mean, you think about, I need to get my heart under control. I mean, nothing's under control of that in terms of good activity.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, and it is, focus on the good activity to overpower the bad activity of the heart, I guess. And again, it comes with that, seeking God first and filling our heart with the things of God. And more thought, more control of our emotions.
Yes, it's intentional. You have to, neurologically speaking, if you get into another side of your spinal cord, brain, all that stuff, when you're angry, you don't even have any thinking going on. It's all pure reaction. So you have to actually switch over to the other spinal tract to get your cognitive abilities working. So it's really an intentional, true, like Gene said, self-control, self-ruling to overcome this instinctual anger response.
Yeah, that's a good point, kind of like what Jessica said too, where your heart is the one that controls the lifeblood of all these things that make these reactions happen. And the body is an amazing thing. And, sometimes it is very difficult to physically handle those. I mean, like if you take fear, for example, if something very frightful happens, some people may react in a certain way and other people may react in a different way. Yeah, it's very difficult to do because our body almost wants to go into a certain reaction. Janine?
But all emotion isn't bad.
What?
All emotion is not bad.
Oh, definitely. All emotion is not bad, right? Yeah, in fact, I'm going to clarify that from the very get-go. All emotion is God-given, okay? It's how we act and how we respond to those feelings of emotions that make it good or bad. Any other comments or questions on emotions? Yes.
I think a lot of these verses imply that if we are a strong person, that we can withstand the devil's temptation. Because there are weak at heart, and weak in spirit, and the devil knows when we get to that point. And he can be that person telling us, well, God doesn't love you, you're not really loved, you're not a good Christian. He can give us those negative feelings that continue to beat one down.
Yeah, it is. It's a very good point. It's not easy, and we know we all sin and fall short of the glory of God. I know we all are affected by our emotions, and I know we've all been angry and probably responded in error to it. I guess one thing to kind of follow up on that, one thing we do have is I had mentioned about the contrite heart, that sorrowful heart, that repentance heart. And so, as Christians, we do have that ability to say, Lord, I have messed up. I was involved in a situation with my neighbor, and I said inappropriate things, and we can come to God with a penitent heart. So that's one good way we can get around that. Say around that, but we as Christians have that ability. But we still have to strive to be as Christ-like as we can. But it's very much a struggle that continues our whole lives.
I was thinking, if we're trying to do it on our own, it could very well feel impossible, if not be impossible, because of the flesh, by our fleshly nature.
Right?
But the fruit of the Spirit is all the things that we need.
True.
Love, joy, peace, patience,
Right.
kindness, self-control. Those are the things that come from God.
And that's like Jackie says, fill those things with like the fruits of the Spirit. Any other comments on
Something I thought of when you were talking about you're not going to overcome with emotions. Not to say emotions are bad. We have them for a reason. But I guess the part talking about you can't overcome without emotion. I thought of Job and his wife when she says to him, "Do you still hold fast your integrity? Curse God and die," which kind of calls to, I guess, the emotional part of just surrendering yourself to that anger. And I guess if anyone had a right to be, it was Job at that point. But he says to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God and not accept adversity? And in all this, Job did not sin with his lips." It just kind of calls to that reasoning, being calm in that moment and really thinking. And it's not something that you're going to overcome with emotions. I think when you're able to, thinking about you can accept good and not the adversity as well.
Okay, no, that's a very good point Kate makes about Job as an example. Very good example there with Job. Carrie?
None of this that we've talked about is, would you say it's unknown by Satan? And the time when he will tempt or try us will be the time when the ability to be strong is weakest. For example, times when we're ill and our strength is weak, or times of stress, or times when someone's behavior is particularly offensive to us. He's not going to wait till, we're sitting in the bed of roses. He's going to go after this stuff when we are the weakest, are most unable to respond with the strength.
Yeah, Satan's smart. Satan knows the right time, and he will attack us when we're low. Okay, so we'll get a start on our next lesson. And to be honest with you, I had this idea that we've talked about. I kind of had my the three lessons last week, this week, and next week. Figured it would kind of be a lesson and a half each week. So I'm on track. We'll get there. And what I want to talk about the rest of this time and next week is matters of the family. And there we go. Matters of the family. And I have to confess, I'm a Brady Bunch nerd. When I was a kid, I watched Brady Bunch all the time. So I put some pictures of some families up there. Interesting thing about the Brady Bunch, Mike was a widower. Okay, his wife had passed away. Now, Carol, they wanted to portray her, Sherwood Schultz wanted to portray her as a divorcee. However, the network that was going to pick up the show thought that was a little bit too racy. We can't be putting a divorcee on TV with three of her little daughters, and that's a little bit too racy. So they left Carol a mystery. We never really were told whether Carol was a widow or a divorcee or what the situation was. And I didn't even really mean to go there with that, But what it made me think about for sure is, what are we talking? What, the early 70s, 74-ish, 75-ish, maybe Brady Bunch. I don't know if it went back to the 60s, but we're talking early 70s, okay? And in early 70s, the broadcast network thought, a divorcee on TV with 3 young daughters? Oh, no, no, no. Isn't it a sad state where we've gotten to now? Now, the smut and the junk that they will put on TV and broadcast. So we've come a long way in the negative of what society has dictated as a family and what is acceptable as a family. And so I put these other pictures up there. The bottom 3 are just goofy. Anyone ever go through their old directories? I like going over to my mom's house. My mom's got like church directories from 1968 and stuff, and they're funny to look at. That's what I kind of think of that one picture there with the mom and the dad and all the kids in the matching plaid things. And I just got that off the internet. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe that was some family from here way back in 1972 that I pulled in some archives back there. I could make up some story or something. Yeah, they got the hairdos there. And then this poor gal, I've seen her and her, that picture's been all over the internet. Maybe some of you have seen that. It's like moms that look like their kids or whatever. And then I've got the cartoon one there, and I put that one on there because you've got the mom and the dad and the kids. And then, you've got maybe the dad's mom over there next to her, the extended family to include the grandparents. And that's the pictures I put up there. If society, if this was I don't want to get too political here, but if this was a training class for the county or some kind of, what is the family? What is, imagine where we're going to go with what a family is nowadays. Kids have 4 or 5 moms and 2 dads, and the family has come a long way from what God designed the home for. And that's what I want to talk about, is looking at Proverbs in the Bible in the respect of how God designed the home with our best interest in mind. And so we got to start, obviously, with Genesis chapter 2, 18 and 24. Then the Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him." And then in 24, "For this reason a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." So God designed the woman specifically for that marital relationship. They were compatible and suitable for each other, to be helpers. And the man would leave his mother and father to go establish another family. Proverbs 18:22, "He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord." So this relationship of a husband and wife, God finds favor in that. And then Genesis 1:28, "God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the animals there." The idea that once you have the husband and you have the wife and they're compatible and suitable partners, then you're to be fruitful and multiply. And we get into children. And then like Proverbs 12 or 127, 3 through 5, "Behold, children are a gift from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be ashamed when they speak with their enemies at the gate." So God also designed children as a blessing in his idea of the home and the family. And then if we look at Proverbs 11:29, it says, "One who troubles his own house will inherit wind, and the foolish will be servant to the wise-hearted." And so another design that God has for the family and the home is that each member has a responsibility to benefit the family as a whole. Each person has its own particular part of the family. Each child, each father, the mother, the grandparents that are involved. Each person that is a member of that home has a particular part to play, and they each benefit each other as a whole. And they must be in unity. So a couple things, 2 primary things that the book of Proverbs teaches that are for the purpose of a home. The first thing is each member has to contribute to the happiness of each other, just kind of like the point I just made there. Each member has to contribute to the happiness of each other. 5:18 in Proverbs says, "Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth." 10:1, "A wise son makes a father glad, but a foolish son is grief to his mother." 17:6, "Grandchildren are the crown of the old, and the glory of sons is their fathers." And then 23:15 and 16, "My son, if your heart is wise, my own heart will also be glad, and my innermost being will rejoice when your lips speak what is right." 31:28, "Her children rise up and bless her, her husband also, and he praises her." Psalms 128, 3 through 4, "Your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house, your children like olive plants around your table. Behold, for so shall a man who fears the Lord be blessed." So the idea of the family and everyone working together and being an equal part is one of the ways that God has blessed us. And the righteous family member brings happiness to all the rest. So that was one of the key things that Solomon tells us about the family, is we all have to be in unity. We all have to be a blessing to one another and work mutually, keeping each member in mind. So this is the second part is that it is a training ground for children. 22:6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he grows older, he will not abandon it." And then 23:13 through 14, "Do not withhold discipline from a child. Though you strike him with the rod, he will not die. You shall strike him with the rod and rescue his soul from Sheol." Direction and guidance are necessary to grow and develop our children into adulthood. And I'll get more into that, parenting children, and that next week. Any comments so far? I think I can get one more point and I'll get to, So who are the participants in the making of a home? I've kind of talked about it already for the most part. You have the husband and the father. Oh, I didn't put those up there, sorry. The husband and the father, his wise and righteous life will benefit the family. We see that in Proverbs 27. "A righteous person who walks in his integrity, how blessed are his sons after him." And then 17:6, "Grandchildren are the crown of the old, and the glory of sons is their fathers." And then 15:7, "He who profits illicitly troubles his own house, but he who hates bribes will live." So a little bit different there in that third verse there. It's like, okay, the father has to be a righteous figure. And if the father, or any of the participants in that household for that matter, brings in, it says illicit troubles, but any type of drama or strife into the home, then they kind of ruin that cohesiveness of the home. And then the other participants that all need to work together, you have the mother or the wife. And the wife and the mother is probably the most pivotal, important position in the home. And we'll spend some time talking about her, probably going to be next week. 14:1 says, "The wise woman builds her house, but the foolish tears it down with her own hands." So again, you see that idea of wise and fool, and you can see that one of the key elements of a good mother and wife, wisdom, right? And one of the key elements that can cause, I don't want to say a bad mother or a bad wife, that doesn't sound right, but something that can make that relationship of a mother or a wife not work, is foolishness and taking that path of foolery that we had talked about. So again, you see this ongoing idea of the path of wisdom and the path of the fool. And then 13:4, "An excellent wife is the crown of her husband, but she who shames him is like rottenness in his bones." And then we will talk about the actual role of the mother and the wife, and the role of the husband, I'm gonna try to stretch that to next week because I don't want to try to cram it in here. But then we got to look at the children. 10:1, a wise son makes a father glad, but a foolish son is grief to his mother. So Solomon, in his wisdom, kind of describes, if you go throughout his Proverbs, you can see what Solomon describes as a good child and what Solomon describes as a bad child. And the good child, in 23:15-16, my son, if your heart is wise, my own heart also will be glad, and my innermost being will rejoice when your lips speak what is right. And then 23:25, just a couple verses up, says, the father of the righteous will greatly rejoice, and he who fathers a wise son will be glad in him. Let your father and your mother be glad, and let her rejoice who gave birth to you. And then you have what Solomon describes as bad children, and we'll clarify this a bit next week. 17:21, he who fathers a fool does so to his sorrow, and the father of the fool has no joy. 17:25, a foolish son is grief to his father, and bitterness to her who gave birth to him. And then I think we'll have time to get this question out here. Maybe this will warrant some discussion, but we know that children are a blessing. But Solomon pretty clearly here is saying the children can definitely bring us grief. And so question number 1 I have on the sheet for this matters of the family. If children are a blessing, what causes a child to bring grief to the parents? Jackie?
Like the prodigal son wanting his inheritance.
Okay, the prodigal son wanting his inheritance money. All right. That'd be a good example. Huh? Okay. Foolishness? Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, that's. I was trying to see who. Was that you that said that, Randy? I was trying to pick out who said that. Yeah, that's pretty much foolishness, and we've talked enough about it, right? And so I think what we'll kind of bring up a little bit next week and get more into these little kids that I love watching run around here. Just, I love it. It brings me joy. It's so much liveliness. Are they bringing us grief because of their foolishness? Not in their full folly, right? These are little kids. They're, and what we'll get into next week, is the age. Where does that age start doing where, a little 4-year-old boy isn't going to bring you grief because he's a fool in his foolery, right? So that's the importance that Solomon, the difference between wise and foolish. God's grand design did not intend children to be a curse. Janine? Lack of discipline and what?
Being untrained, that's what discipline means.
Yeah, and definitely Solomon says they need to be disciplined and they need to be trained, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit next week. But God's grand design did not intend by any means for children to be a curse. And what happened? Satan gets in, sin changed things. But Solomon therefore emphasizes how important it is to train up a child in the Lord. And let me bring up one more point here so I can get this part done to start the next section. Basically, parents have a primary responsibility to teach their children the ways of the wise and guide them away from the ways of the foolishness. And we'll get more depth into that next week. And then grandparents, another key part. Grandchildren are the crown of the old. We talked about that already. The glory of young men is their strength, and the honor of old men is their gray hair. A gray head is a crown of glory. It is found in the way of righteousness. So a lot of times now we are seeing the extended family. We're seeing grandparents and the elderly becoming part of the home. And then you could have 3 generations of family there. And the solidarity and harmony of that those grandparents can bring in is amazing. And the older family members have so much to contribute. You know, it's an unfortunate part of society that the ways that many times when we bring the elderly into our homes, sometimes it might be, you know, there's physical issues, we have to care for them and aid for them, and a lot of times they're not brought into our homes when they were in their, you know, in their prime. But what a joy grandparents are. You know, I could think back to my grandpa. I could think to Barbara and Linda's mama, what a joy she was to our family and Linda's family, particularly having there in the house and those grandkids and great grandkids get to see there. And you know, she was a little different after the stroke and whatnot, but the wisdom that woman had and that she could distill for those younger generations. So I think that's another key thing, that God had intentions, I think, for the elderly and the grandparents to be part of it. A godly home is a man's most treasured possession. And I need to quit right there. So it's 8 o'clock. And next week, what I want to do, I encourage you guys to read on the sheet there. Read Proverbs 31, 10 through 31, I think it is. Kind of interesting chapter right there. And we're going to talk about that next week as we get into the duties and roles of a wife, mother, and husband, father. All right. Thank you for listening.